What's your favorite school lunch memory? Mine are hands down these Lunchroom Lady Yeast Rolls. They're super quick and easy to make, and I'm gonna show you how. I'm Trace Barnett and welcome to Garden Party. First things first, for our Lunchroom Lady Yeast Rolls, you are going to need warm water. And when I say warm water, you want warm water that's coming out of your spigot. And the best way to test it is simply with your finger. Dip your fingertip in there, and if it's too hot for your finger, it's going to be too hot for our yeast and it will kill it, which we do not want. So this is just warm water, feels good to the touch, and I'm going to pour that into our yeast. And so you want to take a fork and just ever so lightly stir the warm water and the yeast together. This is a yeast packet, so if you're using a bulk yeast, use 2 1/4 teaspoons. I'm going to pour in a teaspoon of sugar directly in to our yeast mixture. I'm also going to set a timer, so this is really important if you are going to make rolls or if you've got a lot of stuff going on in the kitchen. I love having just a regular old kitchen timer. I'm going to set it at 5 minutes. We are going to know that this yeast is ready to go into our dough. When it starts to foam and bubble up, we'll know the yeast is activated and it's working. Now all we have to do is wait. So you can see that our yeast here has really foamed up nicely. So this means our yeast was healthy and active, and so time to pour it into our bowl. I'm going to pour that in a large bowl here, and we are going to add the other components of our dough. So I have some milk here, just whole milk that I have heated, and I'm going to add some butter directly to that milk. I like to melt my milk and my butter together because it kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. So I've heated this milk up just like we did the water earlier, just to where it's warm to the touch. So I'm going to pour our mixture here. Our butter has sufficiently melted into our milk, and I'm going to pour that into our yeast mixture. I'm also going to add 1/4 cup of sugar. I'm going to give that a stir as I go. Now, a lot of times people with yeast think you have to just rush to keep the yeast warm, but you don't have to. It's actually quite a relaxing process. I'm going to put in just a little bit of salt there. And then I've just lightly beaten 1 egg, and that goes right into that mixture. We essentially want to mix our wet ingredients really well before we start adding our flour. So I've got a fork, and I'm just kind of lightly, not to where I am almost frothing this up, but I'm just making sure that all of my egg and butter are sufficiently dispersed in our wet ingredients. It just makes it super easy when you start adding your flour to control your wet ingredients this way. So these are Lunch Lady Rolls because it was my lunch ladies who first introduced me to them. It was Miss Chastain and Miss Gilbert who, they were the roll queens of Brilliant Elementary. So did everyone get fresh rolls when they were in school? Because I remember walking down the halls and I remember smelling those yeast rolls cooking, and you always knew it's a special occasion, it's a holiday, Miss Chastain and Mary Gilbert are making their rolls. So now to our flour. I'm using a bread flour today that is wonderful for yeast breads. You can use an all-purpose flour, but if you have access to a good bread flour, use that. It's really light in texture, as you can see, and it's just perfect for yeast breads and rolls. So I've taken my measure here and I've just measured it all the way to the top, and then I've taken my knife and leveled it off. Be sure and do that because you want to make sure that your cups are precise. I'm going to add them in 2-cup increments just so I can incorporate that flour into our roll mixture here. See that cup there has a little bit of space? If I were to pour that in there, it would alter our rolls just slightly. So we want that to be perfectly evened off. Now comes my favorite Lunchroom Lady utensil, and my grandmother always used a broken wooden spoon for her bread, so I do too. It's almost like just a claw, so I can really get down in there. So this is 2 cups of our flour, so roughly half, and I'm just going to mix that ever so slightly until everything just starts kind of coming together. I can already smell the yeast wafting up from the bowl, and it's already starting to bring back memories of the lunchroom back in the day when Miss Chastain would make these rolls. I'm going to add our other cup of flour. And I'm going to give that a good stir. All right, so here is the part where we will start to form our dough. You want to just eyeball this until a soft dough starts to form. And if you are a biscuit maker, you will recognize that this batter comes together to a soft dough almost just like a biscuit. I'm just running my half claw spoon around the bowl here. So you can see that that has come together and really made a good soft dough, so it's ready to go onto our floured surface. So I'm going to dip into our flour here. I always keep this around my work surface. I'm going to bring a cup over here and I'm going to flour our surface. Now I know this looks like a lot of flour, but I'm going to pull from the flour as needed because we are going to knead our dough in just a second. I'm going to flour my hands, I'm going to flour the dough as I pull it out. And you want the dough sticky. So we are going to knead this dough for 8 minutes. So I'm going to set my timer here for 8 minutes and I'm just going to dive right on in. And I'm just going to have a nice relaxing hand massage for 8 minutes. Or working hand massage rather. I often wonder how much dough and how much kneading did these lunchroom ladies do for to feed a whole elementary school of kids? Had to be some tough hands. So as you can see, I'm basically kneading this dough. I'm just turning it over, playing around with it, just kind of starting to work it. In the time that we're done in this 8 minutes, you'll see this transform into this bouncy, rubbery dough, which you would think that wouldn't make any kind of wonderful, fluffy yeast rolls, but it does. So you can see I've kind of made a well here with my dough, and what I do is I just knead it out, and then I'll just rub it back in and just keep a constant flour on the outside. If you're kneading your dough and you see that it starts to stick to your hands, just dip your hands in and just dive right back in to your dough. If you have a stand mixer that has a dough attachment, you can just as easily do it in that mixer. You'll know that your dough is finished when it starts to climb the hook and want to jump out. All right, so our 8 minutes is up, and a good way to make sure your dough is sufficiently kneaded is to take your finger and just dive down into it. As you can see, that's a pretty deep hole and it's already bounced back, so it's perfectly ready to go. I usually just form my dough into a little bit of a circle, just like a small moon. And in a bowl, I'm going to put just a little bit of oil. This is just a neutral oil, just like a vegetable oil. And I'm going to take that and rub the sides of the bowl. The reason I'm doing that is because we want this dough to double in size. And that is going to allow the dough to easily come up the sides of the bowl and not get stuck. I'm going to take my dough and I'm going to put it right into the bowl. And I'm going to rub it around on that oil just a little bit, and then flip it back over. I just want to coat both sides so we don't have any fear of sticking. Now it's time to let our dough proof. And the best way to do that is just to loosely cover your bowl with a cloth. The cloth doesn't have to be damp or anything. And I'm going to transfer this for an hour to just over near my stove. It's a little warm over there. If you have a warm spot in your kitchen, not on direct heat, but that will help our dough proof and become real fluffy and double in size. The hour is up, and now it's time to check on our dough. Of course, I've had to peek a couple times, and you should too. Just lift up and make sure that everything looks as it should. So we have doubled in size here on our dough, and I'm going to take my fist and I'm just going to smush it down just like that. I'm not really sure why, but everyone I know, all the lunchroom ladies, they always punch that dough down. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to oil our muffin tin. And if you don't have a muffin tin, you can just as easily use a sheet pan. I use a muffin tin because when I was in school, I always remembered the Lunchroom Lady Rolls out of a muffin tin. And I always thought that was the cutest thing. And tastes good too. Again, I'm just using a simple oil here, just a vegetable oil. And this makes 12 to 15 rolls, so I'm going to hold it there at 16. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our dough here. You don't have to use any flour or anything. And I'm just going to pinch it off and eyeball it. You can make these as small or as large as you want, but you kind of want them about that size. I like a big roll that kind of puffs up over the top. And I'm just pulling our dough off and rolling. Keep those doughs on rolling. Rolling. They see me rolling. Last one. Boop. Feels right at home in there. So I'm going to take again our cloth here. And if you have a cotton cloth, that works best. And I'm just going to cover that loosely with our cloth. And I'm going to let that proof again for a half hour. The waiting is the hardest part of this recipe, I promise. Our 30 minutes are up, and now it's the grand reveal. And they've just puffed up ever so slightly. And I'm going to brush these with just a little bit of butter so they brown up nicely in the oven. So I've preheated my oven to 375, and we're going to bake these for just 15 to 20 minutes, which after the hour and a half, I think I can wait that long. Now's the time if you're wanting to sell your house or impress anyone, bring them in while these are cooking in your oven. They smell amazing. I'm going to cook these uncovered directly in the oven. Our rolls just came out of the oven, and I wish y'all were here to smell it. The house just smells so homey, so cozy. And while they're still hot, I'm just gonna brush a little bit of melted butter on top. You never can have too much butter with a roll. Plus, it's gonna make them really nice and shiny for when they go to our table. They make the perfect vessels for a heavenly sandwich. I've waited enough time here, I think, and I've gotta have a bite. I'm gonna put a little big dollop of butter in there. It's the perfect blend of fluffy yeast texture. Reminds me of being in elementary school again. I hope I made my lunch ladies proud. Lunchroom Lady Rolls, minus the hairnet. Good to the last drop. Lunchroom Ladies Roll. I'm about to get choked. I can see our dough over there peeking up through the thing.
Oh my God, it's so big.
Yeast. So hard to have good English. What the? What, do you have to put it over a minute for it to ding? Like, oh, I got that all wrong. They see me roll.
I almost lost it when we were taking this one.
We're back. Ding. Oh my God, y'all, these rolls are so good.